History is often written by the victors, but the truth is usually hidden in the shadows. We are told that the Duke of Alastair, Joel Thorne, a man known as the Iron Wolf of England, was a man who bowed to no one. Not to generals, not to kings, and certainly not to women who sought his fortune. But in the winter of 1882, a scandal occurred that was scrubbed from the society papers. It wasn't the beautiful debutante, Seraphina Vance, who captured the Duke's heart. It was the woman standing behind her holding the coats. This is the true, untold story of Amelia Vance, the unwanted sister who walked into a ballroom as a servant and walked out as the most powerful woman in London. But be warned, this isn't a fairy tale. It's a story of revenge. The records from the parish of St. Jude in Derbyshire tell us that the Vance family was an esteemed pillar of the community. But if you look closer at the ledgers from the local merchants in 1882, you see a different story. The Vance family was rotting from the inside out. Lord Henry Vance was a man of weak constitution and even weaker will. After his first wife died, a woman of quiet intellect named Margaret, he married Lady Genevieve. Genevieve was a woman whose beauty was only matched by her cruelty. She brought with her a daughter, Seraphina. Seraphina Vance was, by all accounts, a vision. Golden hair, eyes the colour of spring violets, and a laugh that sounded like silver bells. She was the perfect Victorian doll. And then there was Amelia. Amelia Vance, Lord Henry's biological daughter, was 3 years older than Seraphina. In the family portraits, Amelia is often placed in the back or seated in the shadows. She had dark hair, sharp eyes, and a stillness about her that unnerved people. While Seraphina was taught to dance, sing, and flirt, Amelia was taught nothing. Or so it seemed. "Amelia!" Lady Genevieve's voice screeched through the halls of Vance Manor on a rainy Tuesday in October. "The accounts, the dressmaker is demanding payment for Seraphina's velvet gown, and the numbers do not add up." Amelia sat in the drafty library, her fingers stained with ink. She didn't look up. She knew the numbers added up perfectly. The family was broke. "The accounts are correct, stepmother," Amelia said, her voice calm, possessing a timbre that commanded attention despite her station. "You have spent the last of the harvest income on Seraphina's debut season. There is no money for the velvet gown. Unless, of course, you wish to sell the silver candlesticks grandfather left us." Genevieve stormed into the room, her face flushed with rage. She slammed her hand on the desk. "Do not speak to me of your grandfather, you ungrateful wretch. We are investing in Seraphina. When she marries the Duke of Alastair, we will be swimming in gold. She is the future of this family. You? You are merely the overhead." Amelia looked down at the ledger. It was a cruel statement, but Amelia was used to cruelty. For 10 years, she had been the invisible engine keeping the estate running. She negotiated with the tenants, she managed the crops, and she balanced the books, all while Genevieve took the credit. "The Duke of Alastair," Amelia murmured, a strange glint in her eye. "Joel Thorne. He is not known for his frivolity, stepmother. He is a man of war and business. I doubt a velvet gown will sway him. What would you know of men like the Duke?" Seraphina floated into the room, twirling a parasol. She looked radiant, even on a gloomy day. "He needs a duchess who shines, someone to soften his edges. You, Amelia, you would only bore him to death with your talk of wheat prices and tax laws." Seraphina leaned down, whispering in Amelia's ear. "Besides, rumor has it he is looking for a beauty to display, not a bookkeeper to hire." Amelia closed the ledger with a heavy thud. She didn't hate her sister. Hate required energy. She simply pitied her. Serafina was a prize horse being groomed for sale. Emilia was the stable hand who knew the barn was burning down. But there was one secret Emilia kept locked in a small iron box beneath the floorboards of her bedroom. It was a bundle of letters, correspondence not with a lover, but with a mind. For 3 years, Emilia had been writing to a mysterious financier in London, offering analysis on trade routes and railway investments under the pseudonym E.V. Black. She had helped this financier make millions, and the financier's signature at the bottom of every reply. J.T. The family didn't know it, but the iron wolf they were trying to trap was already intellectually married to the ungrateful wretch in the library. The invitation arrived 3 days later, carried by a courier in the Duke's livery, black and silver. It was heavy, embossed cardstock that smelled of cedarwood. His Grace the Duke of Alastair requests the honour of the Vance family's presence at the autumn ball. "It's happening!" Genevieve shrieked, clutching the card to her chest. "He invited us. He invited the whole family." "He invited the Vance family," Emilia corrected gently from the corner where she was mending a tablecloth. "That usually implies the head of house and his wife." "And his daughters," Serafina added, her eyes wide. "He must have heard of my beauty. Lord Kensington probably told him about me." Genevieve stopped and looked at Emilia with a sneer. "Yes, the whole family. But we cannot have you wandering around the ballroom looking like that." She gestured vaguely at Emilia's plain grey wool dress. "It would reflect poorly on Serafina. If you are to come, you will make yourself useful. You will accompany Serafina as her lady-in-waiting. You will hold her fan, manage her train, and ensure she looks perfect at all times. You will not dance. You will not speak unless spoken to. Do you understand?" It was a humiliation tactic, to attend a ball not as a guest, but as a servant to one's own younger sister. It was social suicide. Emilia looked at her father, hoping for a defence. Lord Henry coughed and looked away, sipping his brandy. "Do as your mother says, Emilia. It is for the good of the family." "Very well," Emilia said, her expression unreadable. "I will accompany her." "Because I have an appointment to keep," she thought. The night of the ball, the carriage ride to the Alastair estate was suffocating. Serafina took up 3/4 of the bench in her massive crimson silk gown, encrusted with rubies that Emilia knew were bought on credit. Genevieve fussed over every curl. Emilia sat on the small, hard jump seat facing them, wearing a simple, high-collared dress of midnight blue. It was inexpensive, but she had tailored it herself. It fit her slender frame perfectly, giving her a severe, elegant silhouette. She wore no jewellery. Her only accessory was a sharp intellect and a small clutch containing a specific letter she had received from J.T. a week prior. The letter had said, "I am surrounded by sycophants and fools, Mr. Black. I require your counsel on the Liverpool deal. Meet me at my ball. I will be the one looking miserable." They arrived at Blackwood Manor. It was a fortress of a house, imposing and Gothic, lit by thousands of gas lamps. The line of carriages stretched for a mile. When the footman opened the door, Serafina descended like a queen. The crowd whispered. She was indeed beautiful. Genevieve followed, beaming. Then Emilia stepped out. She didn't float. She didn't bounce. She walked with a steady, rhythmic grace. The footman offered his hand, and for a split second, he paused. There was an authority in the way she held herself that didn't match her plain dress. "Coat check is to the left for the help," a snooty usher sneered at Emilia as they entered the grand foyer. "She is with us," Genevieve hissed, though she looked embarrassed to admit it. "She is assisting my daughter." "Ah, very good." The usher looked down his nose at Amelia. "Try to stay against the walls, miss. The Duke detests clutter." Amelia offered the man a small, chilling smile. "I shall be as invisible as a ghost." The ballroom of Blackwood Manor was a sea of diamonds, silk, and desperation. Every eligible woman in England was there, and they all had the same predator's look in their eyes. They were hunting a duke. Joel Thorne stood at the top of the grand staircase. He was terrifying. He was taller than the other men, with broad shoulders that strained against his formal tailcoat. His hair was dark, his jawline looked like it had been cut from granite, and his eyes were the color of a storm at sea, grey and turbulent. He didn't smile. He watched the crowd like a general surveying a battlefield he intended to burn. "Look at him," Serafina whispered, trembling slightly. "He looks angry." "He looks bored," Amelia corrected. "Go on, Serafina. This is what you wanted." Serafina straightened her spine, pasted on her dazzling smile, and began to make her way through the crowd. Genevieve followed, acting as an icebreaker. Amelia drifted to the side, finding a spot near a large marble pillar. From here, she could see everything. She watched as Lord Kensington tried to clap the Duke on the back, only to be met with a cold stare that made him retreat. She watched as 3 debutantes tried to drop their handkerchiefs in front of him, only for him to step over them without breaking stride. He hates this, Amelia thought, a rare, genuine smile touching her lips. He hates the pretense. Finally, it was the Vance family's turn. Genevieve pushed Serafina forward as the Duke descended the stairs. "Your Grace," Genevieve curtsied low. "May I present my daughter, Serafina Vance?" Serafina dropped into a perfect curtsy, looking up through her lashes. "It is an honor, Your Grace." Joel Thorne stopped. He looked at Serafina. His gaze was clinical, like a man inspecting a horse for defects. The silence stretched out, painful and long. "Miss Vance," the Duke said. His voice was deep, resonating through the immediate area. "You are wearing crimson." Yes, Your Grace," Serafina stammered, thinking it a compliment. "My family's crest is crimson," he said flatly. "It is bold to wear the host's colors before you have earned them." The crowd gasped. It was a slight, a public rejection. Serafina's face went pale. I didn't know." "Ignorance is rarely a valid defense in my court," Joel said, moving to step past her. Genevieve panicked. She couldn't let this opportunity slip. She grabbed Amelia's arm, pulling her out from the shadows of the pillar. "We brought assistance, Your Grace, to ensure no mishaps. Amelia, fetch your sister a drink. She is faint." The Duke stopped. He turned slowly. Amelia was thrust into the center of the circle. The contrast was stark. The glittering, humiliated Serafina in red, and the still dark figure of Amelia in blue. Amelia didn't curtsy immediately. She met the Duke's eyes. For the first time that night, the storm in Joel's eyes seemed to pause. He looked at this woman who wasn't trembling, who wasn't smiling, who looked at him not with adoration, but with recognition. "Amelia," Genevieve hissed. "Curtsy." Amelia ignored her stepmother. She looked at the Duke and spoke, her voice clear and steady. "The crimson suits her, Your Grace. But you are correct about the ignorance. However, considering the current volatility of the East India shipping routes, perhaps we can forgive a fashion faux pas. There are more pressing matters than silk." The entire room went silent. A plain girl had just talked back to the Iron Wolf. Serafina closed her eyes, waiting for the explosion. Genevieve looked ready to faint. Joel Thorne tilted his head. "The East India routes. What would a chaperone know of trade blockades?" I know that if you don't sell your shares in the Copperhead line by tomorrow morning, you'll lose 40% of your investment, Emilia said calmly. Just as I warned you in my last letter about the grain shortage in Prussia. The Duke's eyes widened. A shockwave seemed to go through him. He took a step closer, invading her personal space. He looked down at her, searching her face. You? He whispered, so only she could hear. You are Evie Black? I prefer Emilia, she replied softly. But yes, and you are about to make a mistake with the Liverpool deal. The Duke didn't speak for a long moment. The tension was unbearable. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth twitched. He turned to the crowd, then back to Emilia. Lady Genevieve, the Duke said, his voice booming across the hall. Yes, yes, Your Grace. Genevieve stepped forward, thinking he was about to scold Emilia. You introduced this woman as your assistant? Yes, she is my stepdaughter, but she is simple. She helps with the chores. I apologize for her outburst. Silence, the Duke commanded. The word was like a whip crack. He turned back to Emilia. And then, the unthinkable happened. The Duke of Alistair, the Iron Wolf, the man who bowed to no king, took a step back. He extended his hand, palm up, and he bowed, a deep, courtly bow of immense respect. Miss Vance, he said, loud enough for the gallery to hear. I have been waiting for you all evening. May I have this dance? The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was as if the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. A duke did not bow to a chaperone. A duke certainly did not ask a woman in a wool dress to open the dancing. Genevieve's mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water. Serafina looked as though she had been slapped. But Emilia stood her ground. She looked at the gloved hand extended toward her. She knew what taking it meant. It meant war. It meant declaring herself an enemy of her stepmother, an enemy of convention, and a target for every jealous debutante in the room. She placed her hand in his. You are making a scene, Your Grace, she said quietly as he pulled her onto the floor. I am making a statement, Joel replied. His grip was firm, warm, and possessive. He signaled the conductor with a sharp nod. The orchestra began a slow, sweeping waltz. As they moved, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. They were fluid together. Emilia, who had never attended a ball, danced with a mathematical precision she applied to everything else. She followed his lead, not with submission, but with synergy. You are smaller than I imagined, Joel said, his voice low, rumbling against her ear. Your letters. The handwriting is bold, aggressive. I pictured a retired general or a very angry banker. I am an angry banker, Emilia replied, looking up into his storm-grey eyes. I just happen to lack the bank. We can change that, he said. He spun her, and for a moment, the blur of lights and colours made the world disappear. It was just them. Why the pseudonym? Evie Black. Because if I signed my name as Miss Emilia Vance, you would have thrown my first letter in the fire, she stated matter-of-factly. Men like you listen to money, Joel. You do not listen to women. Joel tightened his hold on her waist. I am listening now. Only because I made you money. If I were just a pretty face like my sister, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Your sister, Joel scoffed, glancing briefly at the crimson figure of Serafina fuming on the sidelines. She is a decoration. You are a weapon. I have been looking for a weapon. Is that a proposal of marriage or a business merger? Emilia asked, her eyebrows raised. With us, is there a difference? The music swelled. Joel leaned in closer. The Liverpool deal. You said I'm walking into a trap. Explain. You have until the music ends. Amelia didn't hesitate. Lord Calloway is leveraging the deal with non-existent assets. He's cooking the books. If you sign tomorrow, you inherit his debt. I found the discrepancy in the public shipping manifests versus his private coal orders. He's shipping empty crates to inflate his volume. Joel stared at her. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. It transformed him from the terrifying Iron Wolf into something devastatingly handsome. Empty crates. He chuckled darkly. Brilliant. You checked the coal orders. I check everything. The music ended. Joel did not let go of her hand immediately. He looked at her with a terrifying intensity. Do not leave this house tonight without speaking to me again. I have to leave, Amelia whispered. If I stay, my stepmother will punish me. You don't know what happens behind closed doors, Your Grace. Joel's expression hardened into stone. Let her try. He bowed again, kissing her knuckles. As Amelia walked back toward the pillar, she felt the eyes of 300 people burning into her back, but the hottest glare came from her own blood. Genevieve grabbed Amelia's arm the moment she returned, her nails digging into the flesh. You little witch, Genevieve hissed, her face contorted into a rictus of fake smiles for the public while she whispered poison. You cast a spell on him. You embarrassed your sister. We are leaving. Now. But mother, Serafina whined, tears in her eyes. The ball isn't over. It is over for us, Genevieve snapped. She dragged Amelia toward the exit. And when we get home, Amelia, you will wish you had never been born. The carriage ride home was silent and violent. Genevieve struck Amelia across the face before the horses even started moving. Amelia didn't cry out. She sat in the dark corner, touching her cheek, her mind racing. She knew she had crossed a line. When they arrived at Vance Manor, Genevieve didn't even wait to get inside. She shoved Amelia onto the gravel driveway. Lock her in the cellar, Genevieve screamed at the bewildered butler. She is hysterical. She is not to be let out. No food, no water. Not until she admits to her depravity. Mother, please, Serafina said, looking slightly uneasy. The cellar is flooded. I don't care if she drowns, Genevieve shrieked. She ruined everything. Amelia was dragged away. The cellar was cold, damp, and smelled of mold. They threw her in and bolted the heavy oak door. Amelia sat on an old crate, shivering in the darkness. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating. Joel Thorne knew the truth now. He knew who E.V. Black was. He wouldn't let his best financial advisor vanish. He will come, she told herself. The Iron Wolf protects his pack. She waited. Hours passed. The sun began to rise, casting thin slivers of light through the cracks in the floorboards above. At 9 a.m., the sound of hooves thundered up the driveway. Not one horse, a dozen. Amelia pressed her ear to the ceiling planks. She heard the front door burst open. Lord Vance! A voice roared. It wasn't the butler. It was Joel. Upstairs in the drawing room, Lord Henry and Genevieve were having breakfast. Genevieve dropped her teacup. It shattered. Joel Thorne strode into the room, still wearing his evening clothes from the night before. He looked like he hadn't slept. Behind him were 2 solicitors and the local magistrate. Your Grace! Lord Henry stood up, trembling. To what do we owe this unexpected honor? Apologies for the mess Where is she? Joel demanded. He didn't look at Henry. He looked straight at Genevieve. Who, Your Grace? Genevieve feigned ignorance, batting her eyelashes. Serafina is just upstairs. I can wake her. Do not insult my intelligence, Joel growled. He slammed a cane down onto the table, cracking the porcelain. Amelia. Where is Amelia Vance? Amelia? Genevieve laughed nervously. Oh, the poor girl. She had an episode last night, after the excitement. She is unwell. Confused, we had to send her to the countryside to recover. For her own good. The countryside, Joel repeated flatly. Yes, very early this morning. Joel turned to the magistrate. Search the house. Tear it apart, if you have to. You cannot do this, Henry sputtered. This is private property. You have no property. Joel pulled a document from his coat. I bought your debt this morning, Vance. Every penny you owe to the tailors, the butchers, and the banks. I own the mortgage on this house. Technically, you are trespassing in my home. Genevieve gasped, clutching her throat. You bought our debt? I bought your freedom, Joel corrected. Or rather, I bought hers. Now, tell me where she is, or I will have you arrested for kidnapping and fraud. She's in the cellar, Serafina blurted out from the doorway. She was standing there in her dressing gown, looking terrified. Mother locked her in the cellar. Genevieve spun around. Traitor! Joel didn't wait. He stormed out of the room, kicking open doors until he found the cellar entrance. He threw the bolt back and ripped the door open. Amelia! Amelia squinted against the sudden light. She stood up, dusting off her dress. She looked up at him, calm as ever. You're late, she said. I expected you at dawn. Joel rushed down the stairs and, forgetting all propriety, grabbed her by the shoulders, checking her for injuries. When he saw the bruise on her cheek from Genevieve's slap, his face went dark. Who did this? Does it matter? Amelia asked. Get me out of here, Joel. He swept her up into his arms, carrying her up the stairs like she weighed nothing. He walked past the stunned Vance family. She is leaving with me, Joel announced. You can't just take her, Genevieve screeched. It's improper. She is unmarried. Her reputation will be ruined. Joel stopped at the door. He turned, looking at Genevieve with cold contempt. Her reputation? Lady Genevieve, by noon today, everyone in London will know that Amelia Vance is the financial genius behind the Alistair fortune. They will also know that you abused her. As for her being unmarried, he looked down at Amelia in his arms. We can rectify that immediately, if she will have me. Amelia looked at him. I'm expensive, Joel. My fees have just doubled. I can afford you, he replied. 3 weeks had passed since Amelia left Vance Manor. She was staying at the Dowager Duchess's estate, Joel's aunt, to preserve propriety while the wedding was planned. The engagement of the Iron Wolf to the invisible Vance sister was the scandal of the decade. The newspapers went wild. They called it a Cinderella story. But Amelia knew better. It wasn't magic. It was a merger of two apex predators. However, a cornered animal is the most dangerous. Back at Vance Manor, the walls were closing in. Joel had been true to his word. He stripped the Vance family of their credit. They were pariahs. Lord Henry had taken to drinking himself into a stupor, leaving Genevieve and Serafina to face the ruin. We are going to lose everything, Serafina cried, looking at the pile of eviction notices. We have to leave by the end of the month. I'll have to work, Mother. I'll have to be a seamstress. Quiet, you fool, Genevieve snapped. She was pacing the room, her eyes manic. We are not finished yet. Amelia thinks she has won. She thinks she is untouchable because she has the Duke. But the Duke is a man of honor, a man of the law. So? So, Genevieve smiled, a twisted, ugly thing. If Amelia were to be proven a criminal, a thief, the Duke would have to cast her aside. He cannot marry a felon. It would destroy his standing in the House of Lords. But she hasn't stolen anything, Serafina said. She hasn't stolen anything yet. Genevieve pulled a small velvet pouch from her pocket. Inside was a diamond necklace, an heirloom that belonged to Amelia's biological mother, Margaret. It was the one thing Emilia had begged for years to have, and Genevieve had always denied her. "We are going to pay her a visit," Genevieve said. "A peace offering. We will give her this necklace. We will say we want to make amends before the wedding. And then?" "And then," Genevieve's eyes glittered, "we will report that she stole it from me. I have the original receipt of purchase under my name. I forged it yesterday. I have witnesses who will swear they saw her take it. When the police raid her room at the Dowager's estate, they will find the necklace hidden in her luggage." "She's too smart, Mother," Serafina warned. "She is arrogant," Genevieve corrected. "She thinks she is safe. That is when the neck is most exposed." The visit happened 2 days later. Genevieve and Serafina arrived at the Dowager's estate, dressed in somber, humble clothes. They played the part of the repentant family perfectly. Emilia met them in the drawing room. She wore a dress of emerald green silk, tailored to perfection. She looked healthy, strong, and regal. "We came to apologize," Genevieve said, squeezing out a fake tear. "We treated you poorly, Emilia. We were jealous. Can you ever forgive us?" Emilia watched them over the rim of her teacup. She didn't believe a word of it. "Forgiveness is a luxury," Emilia said coolly. "I prefer distance." "Please," Serafina said, pushing a small box across the table. "Mother wants you to have this. It was your mother's. It belongs to you." Emilia opened the box. The diamond necklace glittered inside. Her breath hitched. It was the only physical memory she had of her mother. "Why now?" Emilia asked, her eyes narrowing. "Because you are leaving us," Genevieve said, "and because we don't want to part as enemies. Take it. Please." Emilia hesitated. She touched the cold stones. Sentimentality was her one weakness. She nodded slowly. "Thank you. I accept." Genevieve smiled. "Wonderful. We should go now. We just wanted to do the right thing." As soon as the Vances left, Genevieve went straight to the local constable. She played the hysterical victim perfectly. She claimed that during their visit to make peace, the ungrateful Emilia had slipped into Genevieve's bag and stolen a valuable diamond necklace. Within hours, the police were at the Dowager's door. Joel was there, having tea with Emilia. When the constable demanded to search Emilia's room for stolen goods, Joel stood up, furious. "You dare accuse my betrothed of theft?" Joel roared. "I have a sworn affidavit from Lady Genevieve Vance," the constable said, trembling but firm, "and a receipt proving ownership. We must search the room." "Let them search, Joel," Emilia said calmly. She remained seated, sipping her tea. Joel looked at her. She gave him a subtle wink. The police tore apart Emilia's room. They opened the drawers. They checked the wardrobe. Finally, they opened her travel trunk. Genevieve, who had accompanied the police to identify the item, smirked in anticipation. She knew exactly where she had told Serafina to plant it while she distracted Emilia. The constable lifted the clothes. He dug to the bottom. "Well?" Genevieve asked. "Is it there?" The constable stood up. His hands were empty. "There is nothing here, my lady," the constable said. Genevieve's face went white. "That's impossible. Look again. It's in the side pocket." The constable checked. Empty. Emilia stood up then. She walked over to the fireplace. On the mantelpiece sat the box Genevieve had given her. "Are you looking for this?" Emilia asked, opening the box to reveal the necklace. "She stole it!" Genevieve screamed, pointing. "Arrest her!" "Stole it?" Emilia tilted her head. "That is strange, because I have a letter here." Emilia pulled a folded piece of paper from her sleeve. Knowing my stepmother's treacherous nature, Emilia addressed the constable. "I took the liberty of having a witness present during our meeting earlier." The Dowager Duchess was sitting behind the screen in the corner the entire time, and she witnessed Lady Genevieve giving me this box as a gift. The Dowager Duchess, a formidable old woman with a cane, stepped out from the adjoining room. "Indeed," the Dowager said, her voice like cracking ice. I heard every word. "A peace offering," she called it. Amelia took a step toward Genevieve. "And regarding the receipt you claim to have, I assume you forged it? Because the jeweler who made this piece for my father 30 years ago is still alive. And Joel brought him here an hour ago to appraise it for insurance purposes." An old man stepped forward from the hallway. "That is correct. Lord Henry bought this in 1852. I have the original ledger." The trap had snapped shut, but not on Amelia. Joel stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Constable, it appears Lady Genevieve has filed a false police report and attempted to frame the future Duchess of Alastair. What is the penalty for that?" The constable looked at Genevieve, who was trembling so hard she could barely stand. "Fraud and slander against a peer of the realm," the constable muttered. "It is a prison sentence, Your Grace." Genevieve fell to her knees. "No, no, please. Seraphina, help me." Seraphina backed away, shaking her head. I didn't know, Mother. I had nothing to do with it." Amelia looked down at her stepmother. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a cold finality. "I told you, stepmother," Amelia said softly. "I check everything." The silence following Amelia's revelation was not empty. It was heavy, pressing down on the occupants of the Dowager's drawing room like a physical weight. The diamond necklace, glittering innocently in the velvet box on the mantelpiece, became the focal point of everyone's gaze. It was no longer just jewelry, it was the blade of a guillotine. Genevieve Vance did not scream immediately. First she tried to laugh. It was a brittle, jagged sound, like glass grinding under a boot heel. "A witness?" Genevieve scoffed, her eyes darting frantically around the room, landing on the imposing figure of the Dowager Duchess. This is a conspiracy. You are all protecting her because she is sleeping with the Duke. This old hag is lying." The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. The Dowager Duchess of Alastair, a woman who had once stared down Queen Victoria over a dispute regarding land borders, rose from her chair. She didn't need to shout. She simply tapped her cane against the floorboards. Once, twice. "Constable?" the Dowager said, her voice sounding like dry parchment. "I believe I have just been insulted in my own home by a woman who has already confessed to filing a false police report. Add slander of the peerage to her charge sheet." The constable, a man named Mr. Thaddeus, who had spent his entire career avoiding the wrath of the nobility, looked as though he wished the floor would swallow him whole. He turned to Genevieve, his demeanor shifting from apologetic to professional. "Lady Genevieve," Thaddeus said, reaching for the iron cuffs at his belt, "you are under arrest for fraud, attempted theft, slander, and perverting the course of justice." "No!" Genevieve shrieked, backing away until she hit the wall. "You cannot arrest me. I am Lady Vance. My husband is a peer. Henry, do something." But Lord Henry was not there, and Seraphina, the daughter Genevieve had groomed to be her reflection, was slowly backing away, her face drained of all color. "Seraphina!" Genevieve screamed, reaching out a hand. Tell them she stole it. We rehearsed this." It was the final nail in the coffin. The admission of rehearsal. Seraphina shook her head, tears streaming down her face, ruining the perfect powder her mother had applied an hour earlier. I don't know what you're talking about, Mother. I just wanted to go home. You traitorous little wretch." Genevieve lunged, not at the police, but at her own daughter. Joel moved faster than a man of his size should be able to. He stepped between the women, catching Genevieve's wrist in mid-air. He didn't twist it. He simply held it, his grip like a vice, his grey eyes burning with a cold, terrifying fury. "Do not," Joel whispered, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Amelia's chest. "Touch her. Do not touch anyone in this room ever again. Your war is over, Genevieve. You have lost." He released her as the constables stepped in. As the cold iron locked around her wrists, Genevieve's facade finally shattered. She didn't go with dignity. She wailed, a guttural, animalistic sound of a woman realizing that her entire life, every scheme, every lie, every manipulation, had led her to this moment of absolute ruin. Amelia remained seated by the fire. She picked up her teacup, taking a slow, deliberate sip. She watched her stepmother being dragged out of the room, her heels scraping against the parquet floor, without a flicker of emotion. "Excellent tea, Aunt," Amelia said softly to the Dowager. "Is it an Assam blend?" The Dowager looked at the young woman who had just dismantled her family without raising her voice. A small, approving smile touched the old woman's lips. "It is," the Dowager replied. "You have ice in your veins, child. You'll make a fine duchess." The destruction of the Vance family was swift, brutal, and entirely legal. Joel Thorne was not a man who believed in half measures. 3 hours after Genevieve was thrown into a holding cell at the local jail, a carriage arrived at Vance Manor. It did not contain guests. It contained 3 solicitors from the firm of Lockwood & Co., accompanied by a team of bailiffs. Lord Henry Vance was found in his study, nursing his 5th brandy of the morning. When the solicitors informed him that his wife had been arrested and that the Duke of Alastair was calling in the entirety of the Vance debt, effective immediately, Henry laughed. He thought it was a joke. "You can't call the debt," Henry slurred. "We have an agreement, grace periods." "The agreement," the lead solicitor said, adjusting his spectacles, contained a morality clause. "The arrest of your wife for felony fraud voids all grace periods. The Duke owns the deed to this house, the land, the livestock, and the furniture. You have until sunset to vacate the premises." "Sunset?" Henry sputtered, standing up on shaky legs. "But where will we go?" "That is not a concern of the Alastair estate," the solicitor replied coldly. The reality hit Henry like a physical blow. The stress of decades of mismanagement, combined with the shock of total ruin, was too much for his heart. He clutched his chest, gasping for air, and collapsed onto the Persian rug that no longer belonged to him. He survived, but the stroke left him partially paralyzed and unable to speak. He was carried out of the manor on a stretcher, not as a lord, but as an invalid. The bailiffs were ruthless. They moved through the house, cataloguing everything. The silver, the paintings, the velvet curtains, everything was tagged for auction. Serafina returned home to find the gates locked. A bailiff stood guard. "My clothes!" she cried, clutching the iron bars. "My jewelry! Please, just let me get my things." "Nothing comes out, miss," the bailiff said, crossing his arms. "Asset liquidation. It all belongs to the Duke now." Serafina stood in the rain, watching the lights of her childhood home being extinguished one by one. She had no money in her purse. She had no friends who would take her in, for the scandal of her mother's arrest had already hit the London telegraphs. She was radioactive. For the first time in her 19 years, Serafina Vance was truly alone. 2 weeks later, a cold wind swept through the streets of London. In a small, draughty boarding house on the outskirts of the city, Serafina sat on a thin mattress. Her silk dress was stained with mud. Her golden hair was matted. She had sold her earrings for a week's rent and a loaf of bread. but the money was gone. There was a knock at the door. Serafina flinched. "I don't have the rent yet," she cried out. The door opened. It wasn't the landlord. Emilia stood in the doorway. She wore a travelling coat of dark navy wool, trimmed with silver fox fur. She looked healthy, strong, and immaculately put together. Behind her stood a footman holding a large umbrella. Emilia stepped into the tiny-smelling room. She looked around at the peeling wallpaper and the single, flickering candle. She didn't wrinkle her nose. She simply observed, cataloguing the data. "Emilia?" Serafina whispered, standing up. She looked at her sister, terrified. "Are you here to gloat, to send me to the workhouse?" Emilia closed the door, leaving the footman outside. "I don't gloat, Serafina. It's inefficient." She pulled the single wooden chair from the corner, dusted it off with a gloved hand, and sat down. "Father is in a sanatorium in Sussex," Emilia said. "I am paying for his care. He will never recover, but he is comfortable. Mother has been sentenced to 7 years in Newgate prison. The judge wanted to make an example of her." Serafina sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "And me? What about me?" "That depends," Emilia said. "You are currently destitute. You have no skills. You can't cook, you can't sew, and you have no head for numbers. In the Victorian economy, you are essentially useless." Serafina flinched as if slapped. I can sing, I can dance." "Useless," Emilia repeated. "However, you possess one asset that I lack." Serafina looked up, confused. "What?" "You are charming," Emilia said flatly. "You can lie with a smile. You can make people feel important even when you despise them. You spent your entire life training to be a socialite. That is a skill set." Emilia reached into her coat and pulled out a heavy parchment envelope. She placed it on the rickety table. "Joel and I have acquired a property in Mayfair, the Millicent Tea Rooms. It is currently failing because the previous owner treated it as a hobby. I intend to turn it into the most exclusive establishment in London. But I cannot run it. I am too abrasive. The clientele requires coddling." Emilia pointed to the envelope. "This is a contract. You will be the manager. You will stand at the front of the house. You will greet the duchesses and the earls. You will charm them into buying the expensive pastries. You will work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. You will scrub the floors if the staff is sick. You will balance the till every night." Serafina stared at the envelope. "You want me to serve people?" "I want you to work," Emilia corrected, "for the first time in your life. In exchange, I will pay you a living wage. You will have a small apartment above the shop. If, after 1 year, the tea rooms turn a profit of 20%, I will grant you a minority share in the business." Serafina looked at the document, then at Emilia. "Why? After everything Mother did to you, why help me?" Emilia stood up, buttoning her coat. "Because, unlike Mother, I do not believe in waste. You have potential, Serafina, but it needs to be tempered by labor. The offer expires in 5 minutes. Take it or starve." Serafina didn't hesitate. She grabbed the pen from the table and signed her name. Her hand shook, but the signature was clear. "Good," Emilia said, taking the contract back. "Report to Mayfair at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. The Iron Wolf does not tolerate tardiness." The wedding of the Duke of Alastair to Miss Emilia Vance was the event that defined the 1882 social season. The society papers tried to scandalize it, bringing up the bride's disgraced family, but the sheer power of the Alastair name crushed the rumours before they could spread. Westminster Abbey was packed to the rafters. The pews were filled with the highest nobility of England, many of whom were terrified of the groom and intellectually intimidated by the bride. Emilia did not wear the traditional white lace that was popular at the time. She wore a gown of ivory silk, heavy and structured, embroidered with silver threads in the pattern of gears and wheat, symbols of industry and agriculture. She wore no veil. She wanted the world to see her face. As she walked down the aisle, her head held high. She didn't look like a fairy tale princess. She looked like a queen marching to her coronation. Joel stood at the altar. He was resplendent in his dress uniform, his chest laden with medals, but his eyes were locked solely on Emilia. When she reached him, he didn't just take her hand. He gripped it, as if anchoring himself to the only solid thing in his world. The Archbishop began the ceremony. When it came time for the vows, the silence in the abbey was absolute. "Do you, Joel Thorne, take this woman?" "I do," Joel said, his voice echoing off the stone vaulting, "with my life, my fortune, and my soul." When it was Emilia's turn, she looked Joel in the eye. She saw the boy who had been lonely in a castle, the man who had been surrounded by sycophants, and the partner who had recognized her worth when she was invisible. "I do," Emilia said clearly. "I take you as my husband, my partner, and my equal. I will build with you. I will fight for you. And I will never bow to you." A gasp rippled through the crowd at the breach of protocol, but Joel threw his head back and laughed, a joyous, booming sound that shocked the Archbishop. "I would expect nothing less," Joel said, and he kissed her before the priest even gave permission. The happy ever after was not a fade to black. It was a montage of hard work. Emilia did not settle into a life of needlepoint and gossip. She moved her desk into Joel's study. Together they became a terrifying force of nature. They invested in steamships. They funded the expansion of the railways in the north. They built model housing for their tenant farmers, proving that treating workers well actually increased profits, a radical idea that baffled their peers. They were known as the Wolf and the Owl. He was the power, the face, the intimidation. She was the wisdom, the strategy, the silence. 1 year after the wedding, on a rainy Tuesday in November, a letter arrived at Blackwood Manor. Emilia was sitting by the fire, heavily pregnant with their first child. Joel was reading the Times aloud to her. A footman presented the letter on a silver tray. "From Newgate Prison, Your Grace." "The Governor." Emilia took the letter. She opened it with a silver letter opener. "Your Grace, it is my duty to inform you that prisoner, Behoro II, Genevieve Vance, passed away in the infirmary last night. The cause was typhus. She requested that her personal effects be sent to her daughter, but as she had no effects, there is nothing to send. We await your instructions regarding the burial." Emilia stared at the paper. She felt nothing. No joy, no sadness, just the quiet satisfaction of a ledger finally being balanced. "Bad news?" Joel asked, lowering the newspaper. "News," Emilia corrected. "Genevieve is dead." Joel watched her carefully. "Do you want to stop the work? Take a moment?" "No," Emilia said, tossing the letter into the fire. She watched the paper curl and blacken, the words turning to ash. "Burn it, and have her buried in the common plot at the prison. I will not have her in the family crypt." "As you wish," Joel said. He didn't argue. He knew better. "What about Serafina?" he asked. "I will write to her," Emilia said, her hand resting on her stomach. "The tea rooms turned a 22% profit this quarter. She has earned her share. Perhaps she can use the money to buy a headstone if she feels sentimental." "I do not." Joel stood up and walked over to her. He knelt beside her chair, pressing a kiss to her hand, then to her swollen stomach. "You are a frightening woman, Emilia Thorne," he whispered lovingly. "I had to be. she replied, stroking his hair. "The world wanted to eat me, Joel, so I sharpened my teeth." Joel looked up at her. "And now?" "Now," Emilia smiled, looking out the window at the rain-soaked moors of their estate, a kingdom they ruled with absolute authority. "Now, we feast." History remembers the Duke of Alastair as a titan of industry. But in the private journals of the financiers of London, the true power was always acknowledged. They knew that if you wanted a favour, you asked the Duke. But if you wanted to survive, you asked the Duchess. Amelia Vance, the girl who was told she was nothing, died at the age of 89, the wealthiest woman in England. She left behind a dynasty, a vast fortune, and a single piece of advice engraved on the inside of her granddaughter's pocket watch: "Never let them see you coming." And so, the woman who was meant to be a footnote became the headline. Amelia Vance's story serves as a brutal reminder. In a world designed to keep you in the shadows, sometimes you have to burn the house down to let the light in. She didn't just marry the Duke, she became the master of her own fate. The Vance family crumbled because they valued appearance over substance, while Amelia built a legacy on truth, intelligence, and iron will. Some historians say that if you visit the ruins of the old Vance Manor today, you can still find a small iron box beneath the floorboards. Empty, of course. Because Amelia took everything that mattered with her. Wow, what a journey. Justice was definitely served cold in this one. What do you think? Was Amelia too harsh on Serafina, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and hidden history, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a scandalous story from the past. I've got a terrifying tale about a betrayal in the royal court coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.